Hello, what's going on, YouTube? In this video, we're going to talk about broken authentication. Broken authentication is an application security risk that can allow malicious actors to compromise keys, passwords, and session tokens, potentially leading to further exploitation of user identities and, worst case, complete control of the system. This kind of vulnerability can affect any kind of software that implements access controls to pretty much any application, including databases, network infrastructure applications, and web applications. As with many risks which are highlighted on the OWASP top 10, the authentication vulnerabilities are not a new security topic, and often a malicious actor does not have to be highly technical to bypass poorly implemented identity and access controls. It makes an attacker job even easier given these controls are often entirely non-existent. As such, there should be no surprise to learn that it has been categorized as a critical risk affecting web applications on the OWASP top 10 since 2013. Let us talk about what impact this broken authentication can have. As said, a successful attack can result in a malicious attacker gaining complete access to all data in the web applications, assuming administrator rights and compromising the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the application. There is an example which I would like to mention here, and the link is also there in the description below. This particular data breach affected a German airline ticket dealer called Air Ticket, was discovered in 2016, but reportedly in existence since 2011. For almost 5 years, millions of customers' names, addresses, and credit card numbers were potentially exposed due to this particular vulnerability being exploited. Let us look at some of the scenarios where this broken authentication or instances of broken authentication can be encountered. Let us take a scenario where the application doesn't encrypt or weakly encrypt passwords, or the application permits the use of weak passwords such as password 123 or 123456, right? And there are functionalities within an application requiring authentication, and they lack or implement insufficient protections. Often in other scenarios where broken object level protection mechanisms allow unauthenticated users to access private resources. How can we prevent this? Most often, every development team, they must enforce stronger access security controls for their applications. It should start with implementing a proper and effective password policy. You must implement password retry lockouts. You must handle sessions. What happens after a user has successfully logged in? What happens if a user logs out? What happens if there is an inactivity? How are you handling the session rules around that? And often there should be uh, authentication correctness in additional to the functional aspects of the application. So let us look at an example where there is a Redis database installed on a particular server with poorly implemented access controls, and an attacker will try and exploit Redis database, leading to a data breach. And that rightly describes one of the examples how this broken authentication is demonstrated. This is my Kali box. Let us use Nmap to scan a particular target, and we're gonna only look for the top 3000 ports, and the output is written to a file in the default format, and this is the IP address of the target host. -SC stands for running the default scripts. -SV stands for enumerating all the versions. While the Nmap is trying to fetch that information, I'm going to pause the recording for a minute, and the Nmap has finished running. If you can see, it has scanned around 3000 ports. We can see the SSH is running and is open. We can also see a Redis database running against its default port, which is 6379. By executing the default scripts, we also came to know that we cannot use -no auth, which means authentication is required to be able to log in to the Redis database. Let us use this command to brute force the Redis database and come back with results. I'm going to pause the recording for a minute and see if we have any luck. All right, we have a hit. The Nmap scan has run. I'm just getting the output file. It has run for a few minutes, but it has come up with some valid credentials called rock and roll. So let us try and use this credential that we have got. So you have Redis CLI, and you have the target host 54.193.219.30, and we are going to target 6379. We got a prompt, so let us use the auth. There is no username, and we're going to use the default password, and the authentication seems to be working. So I'm going to use, since I don't know any keys, I'm going to use a generic wild star, and I have these keys being exposed. So let me try and look at what each key is representing. I will use, let us say, Kevin. I can immediately find Kevin's details. Let me try and get one of the keys, Leonard. So I can find Leonard's details. Now assume I am a developer, a database developer who has built this database, and I would like to log into my database server. And having known this vulnerability, I wanted to immediately fix this particular vulnerability. I'm able to successfully log into my database server. First, let me check if I can see if my database is running. Look into the configuration piece, which will allow me to set that password, which is essentially a weak password. I'm going to go to my configuration file, and as you can see, the required pass has the rock and roll set, which is a poor password, and hence the attacker was able to successfully perform a brute force attack against this database and crack the weak password, and was able to log into the database, obtain all the database details, and therefore we have that data breach. Now let us somewhat set a strong password so that the default automated and brute force tools cannot crack this database. There is a tool called pwgen. Let us install it. So there is a tool called pwgen which will generate passwords based on the length that you are given. So it is always good practice to have at least 18 to 20, 18 to 36 characters in your password. So to be really strong, I'm going to give a really hard password, and I choose my length of the password to be 48 characters. And as you can see, I've got one of the passwords. So let me choose this particular password. Let me copy it and go to my configuration file, etc redis.conf, and I'm going to replace this password with a strong password. Now I'm going to save the configuration. I'm going to restart my database. Oops. I'm going to check the status again if everything has come up and running successfully, and it did. Let me check if I am able to successfully log in. Redis CLI -host. Since I'm on the box, I'm going to use 127.0.0.1 -port 6379, and I was able to use it correctly. Let me use rock and roll just to demonstrate that password won't work any longer, and use the password that we have chosen, which is a strong password, which will be very difficult even for an attacker to brute force. And we are in, and we are also able to confirm the data being there, and we are able to access the data. This is an example where you're able to successfully find a vector, or rather the attacker can find a vector by scanning what's running on the host and if there are any services that he can exploit, and he used one of those scripts to brute force the database and finds a weaker password, and that being an attack vector to get into the database, and successfully authenticate to it and perform a data breach, thereby exposing all the data if it is required by the attacker. So I will close here. Hopefully you like this video. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Thank you.